Hey, what's up guys, welcome to my new course on Synthmaster 2.6 by a company called KV331. It's generally the most robust soft synth you can get. It does everything, that's why it's called Synthmaster. And in this video we're going to be going over the general UI and topology, and it's kind of a brief introduction to what we'll be getting into, and we'll be getting into a lot. So, generally, we have two layers here. Each layer consists of two oscillators or sound generators. So we have two layers here. We can go, we could see the actual like signal path here. Filter 1, filter 2, and you just kind of route these, kind of like massive. You can have in parallel series. You can have your voices here. So each layer has its own kind of voice selection, unison, of course, all the usual suspects, and all that. Two filters each. So 4 filters, which is quite fun. Down here we have our selection between oscillator 1 and oscillator 2. There's just a lot, and you can see like single cycle waveforms. We have a lot. We have like stuff from big tone. We have Waldorf kind of pulse ones, and you click and you can cycle through them. There's just a whole bunch, a plethora of waveforms to get you started, not just the typical subtractive ones. They thought of everything, and they added basically every notable waveform you can think of, and you can even load your own as samples and stuff like that, which is pretty fun. Your envelope section, which we'll get into per layer here. Alright, so each layer has its own its own separate synth. LFOs here, we have our LFOs, and these are global LFOs, so a single LFO can affect something in layer 1 or layer 2. Very exciting. Our effects section, usual suspects, vocoder, chorus, echo, reverb, or delay, and all that. We can route them. We can have different sends and buses, and we have a compressor here. And yeah, we have our preset in our browser. So you click on preset. If you made a sound you want to save it, you type in your name, which is, hey, look, it's me. And then you can click save, and then it'll save forever. And you can have it forever. You can go back and, tweak it even more and make like new revisions, or, do all sorts of fun stuff. Macro controls, which you can kind of map with the modulation matrix, which is over here. And you can have pages upon pages of modulation matrices. You can sort by source and target. You can source automatically. You can just do all sorts of fun stuff. So if you wanted to say, okay, I want to look at everything that I mapped to my filter, you can do that. So you go by target, and then you go layer 1, filter, and right? Pretty fun. And you can do that. Settings, you can change your skin, defaults, quality, I'm going best, pitch bend range, and all of that fun stuff. Browser. So this is another cool thing for those just getting into the synth game. You have pages upon page. Well, you have like a lot of presets here, just a lot. They just go on forever, and they're all very usable. And yeah, you can just go crazy and go through them. Basic layer mixing and boost, which does some really fun things. XY controllers as well. So basically thought of everything. And each kind of preset comes with its own macro control, which you can map to like a performance keyboard or your push or whatever. And that's all well and good. Yeah, that concludes the general topology and UI. Yes, that is it for now, and we will be back with some more fun things. Alright, take care and have a good one. Hey, what's up guys? In this video we're going to be going over the basic synth architecture of Synthmaster. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go new, reset preset, and this will just have a general sawtooth wave open. And there you have it. We're going to be focusing on this window here. Alright, so let's get to it. So we have polyphonic options, mono and legato options, right? Pitch bend, so plus or minus 12, right? You have that. Unison, each layer has its own unison mode, so you can have up to 8 voices. and that's stacked up, and you can detune them with the spread here. And do some really neat things. Right, there's that. I'm gonna reset again. All right, cool. So from there, we can go to our ARP, and we can have the ARP on or off. And the Arpeggiator is on another page, which we'll get into. All right, so we have that, all that. So here's where we get to the main meat and potatoes. This is the basic architecture, the sound generation. We have a modular design, semi-modular. We have oscillator 1 and oscillator 2. We select oscillator 1 and 2 down here. So this is like a context-sensitive menu, right? So we have oscillator 1. We can cycle through all of our fun waveforms, right? And a lot of them have like really rich harmonics, and we'll get into that. We can modulate a shape with something else. So we can modulate something else with oscillator 1, or modulate oscillator 1 with something else. In frequency modulation or phase modulation, and we'll get into that later. That's it's really flexible how that works. Each oscillator can be independently modulated by something else, or itself, or something else. And you have all of your modulators here, 4 modulators, so it's highly flexible, and you select them with this here. Pretty fun, right? So we have our filter structure. There's a few options. We'll start with series. So we have filter 1, you turn on and off here. Filter 2, you turn on and off here. You can select filter 1 and filter 2. So 2 kind of filters, independent. Right, so you got your wobbles there. Really fantastic filters. Actually, really nice filters once we get into the distortion. You can have them in series. You can have them in parallel. So oscillator 1 and 2, they're kind of summed together. And then they're split into and then they're split into filter 1 and 2, and then their output, right? And their output into, all of your effects and all that. Then you can have split, so oscillator 1 goes into filter 1 and oscillator 2 goes into filter 2, so they each get their own dedicated filter, right? So from there on in, we have our distortion, our lo-fi, which is like a bit crusher, sample rate reduction, ensemble, which is like a phaser, chorus, and our EQ, right? We turn these on or off. Again, semi-modular design. Turn these on or off via this, right? We have our tabs here, right? So let's, I have the Arpeggiator written down here, so I won't get into that yet. We have our Arpeggiator. You turn that on here. And yeah, it's just really intuitive menus, I think. We have our distortion curve adjustment, which will be a fun video to explain. Pre and post EQ for the distortion. Lo-fi, so bit rate, sample rate reduction, cutoff, so another filter, and another kind of distortion curve here, and our phaser and ensemble, kind of chorusy type thing going on here, right? One thing I would like to point out is, so I'll go new, so what happens here is kind of reflected here. So we'll go 2 voices. And we'll go 8. Right, so that is quite loud. One thing you might want to do is have them free running. So the free running voice is here. Right, end band is here. So it's kind of an interesting way. It's more of a flexible way of adding unison. So you have the max amount of voices here. So you can have just like stacked unison craziness going on. And you can have each oscillator with 8 voices. Right, and then you can just go crazy. Sorry if that's a little loud, but there's all that. So each kind of menu here, you turn the oscillator on or off, it's down here. Right, and then your modulation. And we'll get into all of our modulation. So yeah, hope you enjoyed that video. We'll be back with some more topology and more Synthmaster stuff. So take care, and we'll be back. Hey, what's up, guys? In this video, we're going to be going over the VA oscillators and wavetables in Synthmaster. This is the traditional subtractive synthesis way of going about synthesis. I'm going to reset the preset here, and we have just a basic saw. So traditionally you would have saw, sine, triangle, square, pulse, and noise, and that's what all these are right here. So you have sine, which is single harmonic, triangle, square, sawtooth, pulse with pulse width adjustment, our phase friend there, and noise, right? And that's generally what we had, you know, in the 60s and 70s and 80s, and even today. We're all clamoring to emulate those, right? So we have this right here. So another thing we can do is, so I will start, I'll start with voices. So we have independent unison of each oscillator and each part. So if we have 8 voices here, bam, we have 8 of these stacked up. I'll just do 2 so you can see in here. Right, you can see there's 2 saws and they're stacked up and they're running in parallel. We have free, so free running oscillator. They don't start at the exact same time. When free is disabled, they're starting at the exact same phase. You can really hear that when you bump up the voices. I'll give you a listen. Right, so they all start at the same time and they kind of phase out, and then they become kind of free running, which works sometimes. And that'd be good for like basses if you want the transient of the bass to have continuity at all times. You can do that, but if you want like a pad or something, you want those to be free running. So we'll click free. Right, and that's all well and good. We have kind of pitch key tracking. That's if you want them to be in continuity with what pitch you're playing, then you want to keep it that way. And all these are pitch drift, and you can have kind of analog-y kind of drifting of the tuning, just like an analog synthesizer. That's what you're into. So we have our controls here for each oscillator. We have volume, obviously. Tone is a low-pass filter. If something's a little bit too sharp, you can kind of roll it off. Right? It's just another filter, entirely flexible. Phase is the starting, where it starts, so you can adjust the phase. And for pulse width, this changes the pulse width as well. Right? And that's basically the phase pitch. And you have your semitones and octaves here. So it's in semitones and octaves, so that's 2 octaves. That's really useful. Fine tune for, fine tuning everything. Detune is for your voices. So if you have 8 voices and you have detune to 0, right? They're all stacked up. And back to the example of free running. If you want, your bass to have continuity, let's go detune slightly here. Right? They all start at the same time and then they go out every time you hit a key. It's not. Right? You have just randomness. Right? So there's that. Let's go. We'll go free running again. Pan. Pans it, and stereo. It's kind of a stereo. It detunes the left and right slightly and makes it into a wider signal. And I just wanted to get the unison part out of the way, so you would have more of an idea of what you can do with that. You also have unison per part, so you can have 8 voices on oscillator 1, 8 voices on oscillator 2, and then you can have 8 voices overall on just one layers. So you can have just an insane amount of voices here. So we'll just detune that, and this will be loud. I'll turn that down again. Okay, so we have 64 saws with 1 key. If anyone knows what song that was, let me know. And yeah, that's Pretty neat. So another thing you can do is the wavetables. Now these are still traditional, still subtractive, kind of VA, but they are single cycle waveforms. You know how you take, so look down here. You have your saw, oops. You have your saw here, and you want to shape that, and you shape that with a filter. Right, and you can just add harmonics, do all sorts of fun stuff with that, and that works out well. But if you want to do something else, you want to have one of those waveforms already there, you have all of these waveforms available, and they're all really cool, and they're from like famous synths and stuff like that, and you can, you know, you have them unison, you can have them modulating other things, you can just do all sorts of fun stuff. You can even have something like a multi-sample, or a multi-sample, a ZFC, a sound font, and you can go say Lost in Space. This is my favorite one. So these are kind of like sample players, romplers. Oh yeah, sorry, unison doesn't work for that, so we can go two voices here. Forgot to mention that the controls here don't work for multi-samples, but you can still filter with these. So unison doesn't do anything here, just letting you know. So yeah, that's one of my favorite sounds, just because it sounds old school and dirty. But that is our VA oscillators and wavetables and our sampler. So you have single cycle, and then you have traditional. Everything here with phase and all of your options here. So load up an oscilloscope and give it a listen, and you can go through all of them, and you can be like, oh yeah, that's how that works. And it's really useful to have oscilloscopes and you know, signal analyzers open, which are lightweight. You can get this at rs-met.com. It's freeware, and it's pretty fun. All right, Synthmaster. We'll be back with some more fun stuff. Hey, what's up, guys? In this video, we're going to be going over the wave scanning aspect of Synthmaster. So we're going to reset our preset here and go to our drop-down menu of oscillator 1. Make sure oscillator 1 is selected. To wave scan. So wave scan is the ability to morph between two waves. So right now, we have a wave index and the number of waves. So with the number of waves at 2 and our wave index here, all the way to the left, it's, you know, our wave of number 1, and all the way to the right is our wave of number 2. And we can have up to 16 different waves. So I'll give you an example of what that is. Right now, it's a sine wave, a very deep sine wave. We'll go 303 saw. No, that's a different one. Right, so we just went random. We'll load another random one to wavetable 2, and we can morph in between them. So this one and this one morph together would be this. So you take the sum of both, and then you just kind of mash them together. Right, so we can kind of have more if we want to. Right, so right now, I will turn on our filter just to get some drive. I'll open our filter. Right, so we have some bro music going on there. I'll load Moog. Right, so what we can do with that, with the wave index, something really cool. We can have up to 16 of these guys, so we're just going to have 3. You can have this map to, we will go layer 1, oscillator 1, wave index down here. You can't see it, but the drop down menu is here, I assure you. The wave index, so we will go to LFO 1, and we will map LFO 1 to that, and we'll go all the way to right here. Right, so this LFO, right, so I'll show you. So the LFO is cycling through all this for us, and that's just a little bit of an introduction to modulation of any kind of parameter that you see. Right? You could probably get something with a bit more bite to it, but that's one of our examples. Another example is we'll go reset preset. That's kind of rhymes. It's totally cool though. We'll go something interesting like that, I guess, and the second one will be maybe a vocal. So something really kind of weird and interesting, a weird timbre. And then we can bump up the voices, go free. Right, add a bit more unison to two voices, detune and pan. Right, might not be the best example. We'll load a random waveform. Right, so we got some weird 90s house chords going on there, but that is the magic of wave scanning. You can get some really interesting timbres, and you know, to do that you would need like a bunch of oscillators, and you have to run them through filters and such, and you know, you can't really get that. Right, we'll turn off unison just so you can hear what it sounds like, or see what it looks like. Right? Very interesting. It's just interesting, and that's why I'm a fan of wave scanning. You can have up to 16, and you can just cycle through them. You can even have a very, very slow LFO with just a constantly morphing between 16 and 1. So you get like a really nice a true evolving pad, and that is something to be interested in. All right, hope you learned stuff, and we'll be back. What's up, guys? In this video, we're going to be going over vector synthesis. It's much like wave scanning, where you have a number of waveforms here, and you scan in between them and morph in between them and create new timbres. The vector is an XY controller with 4 waveforms that you can morph between 2 or 3 or 4 waveforms, and you can get all new timbres that way. There's 2 modes. 1D is a traditional XY controller, and 2D is what we're going to be working with today. So 2 things you need to know. Each of these has a waveform selector, and you'll just load up a square, and we morph in between them. Right, you'll notice that that's 4 tones higher. So the integer is like the bass note. So an integer of 0 would be nothing. Integer of 1 would be, you know, it's like a 1-to-1 ratio. So 1 would be the root note of whatever you're playing is the sound that's coming out. And this is how you create harmonics, and this is additive synthesis. You'll notice that they're creating harmonics above the fundamental. Right? And if you have like 500 and something of these, you can create any sound in the world. But that's way out of the scope of what I can explain. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to use it as kind of an additive, you know, let's make something crazy. We can make a sawtooth square. Right? And then we can add a bit of, we'll set these both to integer 1. Right, so typically we can add a square to a saw. To give it a bit more bite, we can also add we'll go with saw. This is a saw. We can add a sine wave to a saw to give it a bit more bottom. We can add a sine wave to a square. give it a bit more Nintendo-ish stuff. We can also just load in a random. We'll go random waveform again. There we go. And we can just keep on loading randoms, because this is where you'll get like your upper harmonics, which sound harmonically pleasing. Another thing we can do is we can set this to integer of 12, so it's an octave up. Right, so we can do all sorts of fun stuff that way. I'll load one more waveform. Let's see what we get. Right, and that is the vector aspect of this. You can do all sorts of fun things. You can map this to a controller via X and Y. That's what you call it, an XY controller. And it's pretty awesome. You can add unison and you can modulate it, and it's quite interesting. Yeah, that's it for the vector. It's somewhat like the wave scanning, but different, and a new way to do it. And you can get some really interesting tones and morph between all of your different single cycle waveforms, even the ones you've loaded in. And that way, you get interesting timbres. Alright, I've rambled on enough. We'll be back with some more fun stuff. What's up, guys? In this video I'm going over the additive synthesis engine of Synthmaster. I'm just going to play a little sound for you here, and then I froze it. I have two FFT based spectrum analyzers going on here, so you'll notice that sawtooth has a lot of upper harmonics, right? Sawtooths are usually very rich. They're probably the richest basic waveform you can get. And what I'll do is then I will open up our sine. Right, and our sine wave is something with, is not as rich in its harmonics. Now this is called the fundamental, right? This saw also has a fundamental, but then it has another sine wave, and then another sine wave, and then another one, and then another one, and they just go, and they just keep on going, and you can get, all these different sine waves to make a saw wave, right? So that's what additive synthesis is. And that's why I kind of saved this for last. This is kind of adding harmonics to create, anything really. If you have enough sine waves, you can create any sound, right? And that's basically how all that fun stuff works. That's the basis of additive synthesis. But what this is used for, this is really useful. You have all of these different waves that you can just stack on top of each other, and you have all of your integers. You know what integers are. So what we can do, right, what we can do is load in something that's not so much a, let's go square, and we'll set the integer of this to 12. Well, we want like a rich upper harmonic of a sawtooth. Right, see that? Right, something very electro-y, pretty fun. We'll set this base integer to 0, and then we'll add a sine wave to round it out and just give it some meat. Right? And this is what additive synthesis is. Remember the integers. We can have a 7th or a 5th. I think it's a 5th. We have a 5th sawtooth. Right, and you can just make some really unique sounds, and that's just with 4 oscillators, but they're all stacked up, and that's all well and good. I'm going to show you something else with this, just for fun. And this is what you can really do. So you can do sawtooth, sawtooth, and we can pan these all to the left, and then sawtooth, sawtooth, pan these all to the right, detune slightly there, detune slightly there, and let's set the integer to 1, integer 1, integer 1. All right, so we have 4 sounds here. Right, so we can essentially have an 8-voice kind of oscillator, and we can have total control over the voices. So say if we want like one voice to be a sneaky little square, or if we want another voice, if we want to change another one to, let's say, one of the Roland Juno sounds. Right, you can really get some interesting tones that way. And that's just with 4, and you can, you know, have, I don't even know how many, 8 times 2, 16, 32 waves plus unison. That's a lot of sounds there. That's a big sound you can create, and that's just with panning and detuning. You can detune these even more. So if you have 7 of these, you can essentially recreate the supersaw and have control over each kind of nuance of that supersaw. You can even add a sine wave. You can swap one out and create all new kind of sounds. But yeah, that's basically additive synthesis. It's a big subject, but completely out of the scope of the time that we have. And it's really fun to go about and do things that way. All right, that is additive synthesis. Hope you learned stuff, and we'll be back. What's up, guys? In this video, we're going to be going over pulse and hard sync. So pulse is a square wave, much like this square wave, but pulse is silent. No, I'm just joking. It's an adjustable pulse width of the square wave. So you have your phase down here, and this is how you control it. Right, so if you're 180 right here, or 190, or 180, yeah, we'll say that. You have your square wave, but then you can adjust the pulse of the duty cycle in the positive or the negative amplitude. Negative. And when you modulate this with an LFO, that's called pulse width modulation. So that's the sound of, you know, those old school synths. Another sound of the old school synths is called hard sync. And I'll give you an example here. We'll just load up 2 squares. We'll enable it, oscillator 2 squares here. Right, so right now you have volume. We can fine tune one of them. Right, so now they're both playing, they both start at the same time, but then they go out of phase and they don't restart every cycle. And when the hard sync is on, they restart every cycle. So with this, right, especially if I'm free running, right, just chaos, but it's good analog chaos. Each oscillator is running at their own kind of speed, and the fine tune, it could be a little off. It happens in older gear. The pitch tracking goes out, and that's how you get that sound. They're not perfect. So we can make it perfect with something called hard sync. So what that does is every time oscillator 1's duty cycle finishes, so I'll show you what a duty cycle is. A duty cycle is from here to here, right? That's the duty cycle. That's just the shape of the sound. That's called a duty cycle. Every time the duty cycle of oscillator 1 is finished, it restarts oscillator 2. And it's called hard sync. So it just keeps on resetting. And I'll give you an example of what that sounds like. Oh, I want to turn it on. So right now, they're beating, they're phasing. You can hard sync them. I can press that all day, and it'll still look like that. And we can adjust the pitch. Alright, so every time that duty cycle, you can kind of see it, the duty cycle of the first oscillator, first square, every time that finishes, oscillator 2 restarts, and that's called hard sync. Right. Right, and you can do some pretty neat things. Another thing, say if you don't want it to sound hard synced, but you still want it to sound synced up, and the reason why you do this is if you have like a bass, if you want it to bite every time, like that, right? If you have the sync off, it just starts whenever it wants to, especially if it's free running. Right? You don't want that. You want it to have continuity with every time you hit that key. And that's the secret. Well, not the secret, but it's how you make your low basses sound good, basically. You can adjust the phase adjusts the phase alignment of the second oscillator, but it still syncs the same way. You can can see it moving. Right, so say if we want that, they're kind of canceling each other out. So you want that for just maximum bitage. Right, and there you have it. That is basic pulse and hard sync. Hard sync is very useful for basses if you want them to bite every time and you're having some trouble. But yeah, that is it for that, and we'll be back. Hey, what's up guys? In this video we're going to be going over audio rate modulation in Synthmaster. So we're going to be focusing on this little area right here. So we have frequency modulation and AM modulation, right? So frequency modulation is frequencies, AM is amplitude modulation, so volume. Think about that. All right, so let's do frequency modulation first. You have two flavors, frequency or phase modulation, and you can select them here. You have 4 modulators, so you can drop down and say, I want modulator 1 to affect oscillator 1. Right, so what that does is that will it'll modulate the frequency like an LFO very, very quickly with a sine wave. So you can see that's classic FM. You have a saw wave, and the pitch is being kind of wiggled with our sine wave here, and that's creating an FM sound, right? And we can set the bass integer. Right now it's bass 1. We can set it to something harmonic, so that's really frequency modulation-ish. Oops. And I'll just zoom in there. So that's basically what we're looking at here. Frequency and phase modulation. It's just a very, very fast pitch-tracked LFO. That's basically all it is, really. Oops, I clicked on RSMet. All right, there's that. We also have pulse width modulation. It's another way of going about things. I will go reset. It's another, so I'll go to oscillator 1. I will select a pulse. I will set the phase. You know how I was telling you you can adjust the phase of this square. And if you modulate, it's called pulse width modulation. I'm going to show you how to do it. I'm going to show you a different way. I didn't want to confuse you before. You can still use drop-down menus if you wish, but I want this to be modulated by a source. So the source will be synth LFO 1 amount, I guess 5 o'clock. Right, a little bit too much. Right, so that's being modulated by this LFO here. Right, so what that does, that's basically pulse width modulation, and it's a classic way of going about things. It's very 80s, especially if you bump up the unison and you have all sorts of fun stuff. You can make really bumping square leads. All right, one more thing is amplitude and ring modulation. So at this point in the synthesizer, we have the ability to modulate the amplitude. So I'll give you an idea what that is. Right now we have a sine wave. So if I were to take the volume and modulate it very quickly, way quicker than that, I would get amplitude and amplitude modulation. So what I'll do is I'll have that as a modulator. So AM source 1 is down here as well. Everything is kind of connected. I'll go to our mod 1. Right. Oh, I'll go amount. So what that's doing is I'll set the DC on. I'm trying to give you a good example here. Maybe it's there we go. Right, so you can see it's modulating the amplitude. You can see it there, and I'll just kind of turn it up and you can see, oh, that's what it's doing. Right, so it's modulating the amplitude very, very, very quickly. And that's called amplitude modulation. And it's kind of cool for weird sounds. And it's classic in how it goes about it. And it's just basically a very, very fast LFO for the amplitude. And you can do that with an LFO here, but this is just another way to do it. And that would be kind of, we're done with our oscillators. We're going to get into filters next, and it's going to be fun. All right, take care, and hope you learn stuff, and have a good one. Hey, what's up, guys? In this video, we're going to be talking about the filters in Synthmaster, and there are a number of configurations. We can have a split, so each oscillator goes into either filter 1 or 2. I should also mention there are 2 filters per part, per layer, right? So we have split, so each oscillator goes into its own dedicated filter. Parallel, oscillator 1 and oscillator 2 are merged, and then they each go into their filters respectively, separately, and then they're merged again. And then series, each oscillator goes into filter 1, and then filter 1 is output to filter 2, and then that is put into the output. Alright, so we will have, I guess, just series. So how you enable the filters by clicking on the filter here, so it's like illuminated, or you can go on or off. So there's 2 modes, 2 major modes, digital and analog. You'll notice that there's a few changes. You have this 12 and this 24. What this means is in the digital mode, the cutoff amount. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go noise. Right, so this is the filter completely open. And then this would be the filter closed at 12 dB per octave. 24 dB per octave, it's more of an intense cut. So this means that, you know, you have more poles. So it goes like 12, 24, 48, and then like brick wall, and then like surgical cut. It's crazy stuff. Analog, there's no selection for 12 or 24. It's variable. So the slope is variable. You can have basically an all-pass filter when you have analog selected. That just, you know, everything goes through. Or you can have it very smooth to the very sharp cut, and we'll boost that just so you can hear that. Right, so a different flavor of filter. So the reason why I use filters is to attenuate the sound. It's a classic subtractive way of doing synthesis. So we've been focusing on our oscillators and how we do all sorts of fun things with oscillator, with pitch and phase and different wave shapes and modulation, AM, FM, PM, GM, you know, all this fun stuff. And now we're going to attenuate our sound in the filter, and the filter is a great way to kind of just make things sound cool. I'm going to give you a few examples of that. So I'm going to go, I guess, sawtooth. Right, so typically for digital, for let's say like hard digital sounds, so we have a hard kind of digital sound there. A digital filter would work best with that. Analog would be for analog sounds. It's not a lot less linear, and it's a lot more intense, a lot less brittle, and it smudges. All right, and the resonance will feedback as well. So we've been focusing on the 2 modes, analog and digital. Each mode has different kind of characteristics. Low pass, high pass, band stop, or band reject. Low shelf, high shelf, peaking, multi-mode filter, which is really cool. Dual filters and a comb filter. Comb filters are exclusive to digital filters for some reason. So I'm going to start out with analog because I like analog, and it has a variable slope, which is cool. So we have high pass, which attenuates everything below the certain cutoff point, right? So it's an opposite. I'm going to do digital just for now. It's the opposite of low pass. So right. Band pass is a low pass and a high pass, and the resonance does a different kind of thing. It's another way to attenuate the sound. Band stop. It's kind of like a surgical EQ. How you see me do my kicks. And with that, the older kind of digital synths, they didn't have phasers. And when you come across a synth that doesn't have a whole lot of effects, you can make a phaser-ish sound without any of the issues that comes about with the band stop or band reject. Very nice, a different kind of phasing effect. Low shelf is more like an EQ, boost and cut, and you can just kind of think of it as like a smoother kind of low pass and high pass. Peaking is a band stop, but it's highly resonant. Surgical. You'll notice that the little valley up here is it's more resonant at this valley at the valley than band stop. But yeah, you can also boost it to create an interesting kind of phasing effect as well. And the multi-mode filter. So let's get this going. I'll turn the volume up. Double click. So a multi-mode filter is pretty cool because it's a low pass, band pass, and high pass filter all put into one, and the mode changes that. Right, so you can modulate that. Right-click modulate, and you can have it alternating between low pass and high pass, and you get really cool sounds that way. Dual, so you can have dual filters with different modes, right? So it's basically two multi-mode filters. And you can mix in between them and make some vowel-y sounds. Right, get some really cool things that way. And the comb filter, which is exclusive to the digital filter, it's just a bunch of peaks. Be careful with this one. Right, you get some really interesting sounds. Digital and analog, they both kind of have their own flavor. Analog is more analog, and digital is more digital. A few more things that we need to take into account. I'll do a noise wave. Right, key tracking. Yeah, so we know slope, we know cutoff, attenuates it, resonance, boosts the resonance frequency at the cutoff point. Volume is a volume kind of drive for the filter. So in case you boost the resonance, the overall volume kind of goes down. So you can boost that and to your heart's content, and it's all well and good. Key tracking. Key tracking, what that means is as you go up in your keyboard, the filter will slowly open. So with key tracking off, no matter what we press, the filter is always at the same state. Key tracking on, the filter will open, and if we boost the resonance, we can actually play white noise, right? This as like you can have notes in it or whatever, right? Especially with a band pass, right? Very analog stuff, very super cool. Again, you can have more than one filter, so you can have something really highly resonant, or even a multi-mode filter, or we'll go dual filter, right? Something like that. We'll go right, something very deep. We're going deep today, right? We're gonna have filter 2. Select filter 2. Right, so we can have one filter, let's say digital, so very brittle, but say if we want to have like that analog smudge in there, we can use that. Right, so I'll go back to digital. I confuse myself here. Or we can have 2 multi-mode filters, 1 digital and 1 analog. So basically every layer has 4 filters plus a tone knob, so that's a lot of filters actually. And yeah, that is introduction to filters of Synthmaster. Hope you enjoyed, and we'll be back. What's up, guys? In this video, I'm going to be going over filter distortion, and I'm going to try not to confuse. Filter distortion is a great way to like add like a smudge and warmth, analog warmth, and generally awesome sounds to your sound. Alright, so we have a basic sound there, and we'll turn on filter 1. Right? It's really quiet, but trust me, this will get a little bit loud. There are 3 different routings of the filter distortion. There's, well, no distortion. Before, after, and inside filter. So we'll go before the filter. So you'll have your oscillator 1, and then this point right here, you will have, say, an amplifier, and it'll amplify it and then drive the filter quite a bit. And how you do that is with this window here. So you have pregain, drive, and bias, right? So pregain and drive, they are one and the same. Drive is, think of drive as your headroom, right? So if you have like 9 o'clock headroom and you boost your pregain to 9 o'clock as well, you'll be fine. It's transparent. But if you drive the gain far beyond what this knob can handle, you get distortion, right? So what I'll do is I'll show you after filter just to show you. Oops. Right. So right now, totally fine. And as we move up, it just kind of folds back. And the bias here adds or takes away harmonics. So what it does is it basically adds an offset to the distortion stage. And yeah, it's just how you mess around with harmonics and amount. So some harmonics sound a little bit more natural than others. Right, so right about here, we'll notice that we're totally driving it. So these are, they should be roughly about the same before you start tweaking. Right, so now we're getting some really harsh, gnarly fold back here. And the bias controls the harmonics. Right. So post or before filter, so pre-filter or post-filter. What do you use? Well, it's up to you, really. If you're using a highly resonant material, then I would, and if you wanted to be highly resonant, like a 303, I would go post-filter. You want the distortion, the resonance to be pushing and, you know, pushing into the distortion unit, so you want that after. And then with your filter 2, you can kind of shave off and attenuate all that afterwards. Inside filter, now this is kind of strange to me, but it works pretty well with a dual filter, and it works well with comb filters as well. Right, adds a nice little touch to dual filters and analog type filters, which is pretty fun. Right, so you notice we're getting quite a bit of smudge there. I'm going to show you something here. Right, so we have a sinusoidal wave, and we're going to boost that and boost it. Maybe not boost that. Let's have it there. So we have sinusoidal wave, right? And it's like perfectly uniform and all nice and fun, right? And this is where like the wave shaping comes in. Now this is kind of a big subject, but generally this corresponds with how you shape the wave with your distortion. So what we'll do is we will just turn on, so we'll go post filter, and the filter is completely open, kind of, but yeah, completely open. So we'll go after filter, so post filter, we'll boost it, and then we'll zoom out so we can, oops, see everything. Right, so now we have that. So what we can do is we can kind of mold it by grabbing onto these points. And notice what it does to the harmonics down here. Right, kind of back to normal. Right. Right, so there's the line here. Everything below this line, this will adjust the curve. And this point will adjust the volume. So it basically bends it. And you can get some really interesting kind of effects and distortion this way. So there's no like pick a distortion model, pick a guitar pedal, pick a whatever. It's you kind of dial in your own flavor of distortion here. Right, so we essentially made a kind of a boring sine wave into something a bit more, you know, harmonic. Right, and it sounds pretty cool. So imagine what that'll do to something like a square. It gave that square like a really cool kind of peak sawtooth, and then it had like square down here. So if we turn that off, you can just see what it did, which is pretty cool. So how we shaped it up here just by moving a few parameters around, we got some really interesting, you know, open filter electro basses, which are pretty fun. And of course you can set up another filter for that. There's more than one distortion unit, but this is basically what it's all about in the filter distortion. So it's pre-post inside and kind of a shaping. Oh, another thing I should mention is, so if you go after filter, no wait, there we go. And then we go, oh, sorry, hold on. So we have two, wait, there. So we're going to have a digital filter. I forgot we were on analog. So digital filters, they can't handle going above a certain point. They start to kind of break down, and they kind of limit themselves. And this is what this limiter is for here. We have an attack. So if we really bump this up, we'll bring the threshold down just so you can hear it. You can really hear that. Right, so it's kind of grabbing onto the audio really quickly, and if we can increase the attack, we can increase the transience of it. Right, typical digital distortion. When you drive a digital filter, that's what happens. And of course the decay and all that fun stuff. And it's all about the threshold. Think of this as like the point of no return. It's like a hard clip. So it could be used as like another form of distortion. And it could be, you know, to protect your ears just in case you go over it. But threshold, make sure the threshold's down, and then use the threshold as you go. And if you want it to be a bit more snappy, then you will want to adjust the attack. Right? All right, that's it for that, and we'll be back with some more fun stuff, and take care. Hey, what's up guys? In this video we're going to be going over the Arpeggiator and the sequencer in Synthmaster. So we have a patch I just pulled up here. One thing I should mention is Synthmaster is perfect for trance music, just saying. So we're going to open up the Arpeggiator section and turn it on. There are multiple modes, and the default is chord mode. So chord mode means you can play. So usually, if you have like the regular arpeggiator, it will go first note, second note, first note, second note. If you press more than one note at the same time. Right, kind of pretty. Chord mode means that it just repeats and it plays both notes at the same time. Pretty, and that would be basically the two modes. And you have up down, up plus down, up plus down 2, up down plus up, and then down plus up 2 is, and as played is kind of like the traditional way of how the notes will cycle in between each other. And I'll just give you an example of that. Right, so if you're pressing more than one note, we'll play a triad. Right, it'll play in that kind of succession. We have 4 steps. If we go 3, for 3 notes, it'll constantly reset. Also, you can adjust the velocity of each note and all that. So we will go arpeggiate, and this will be kind of the order of things and how it works. So I will go, yeah, I'll just have like I'll just have a triad here. And I'll show you what it does. So you can have it set up and you can change. You want it to go up 1 octave and then down. Right? Or you can have the priority of the second, third, or last. Or you can have a random, which is pretty cool. Another thing I should mention is there's the slide and hold. Slide is like a TB303 where he goes boo doo doo doo, right? Okay. Someone sample that because that was ridiculous. But that's with kind of the 303 kind of gliding and accent. Hold means that it ignores the duration, which brings us to our duration. You'll notice up here that we have duration. So we can go very small duration. Right? We'll go 4. And we'll go, yeah, we'll just hold the third. Right, so you can see what it's doing. Right. Right. Swing, you can physically see, and I really like how the arpeggiator is laid out. Right, so you can get some really cool kind of minimal swing. You can get some like techno stuff going on. Really, really useful, and it's right in there, and it's highly musical in my opinion. Volume is the velocity. You can do it per step again when we're in chord mode, and that works out well. Range, you can have it moving, press 1 note and it'll move up and down per octave. 2 octaves, 3 or 4. Right? We can have multiple steps, which we'll get into. We can have a sync rate of all of these fun little things, 16 triplets, right? So you can get some cool stuff there. Quarter triplets. Right, really fun. We'll go 16ths for now, and velocity step note. So that will be for, say, if we have a sequence, we can draw in a sequence. And if you click on anything and you drag horizontally, you can make the sequence longer, the note longer. Right, so you can get like typical techno. Right, and that's pretty fun to do. But we'll have it just like this. You can sequence it per 2 octaves. So for the techno guys, not just for the trance guys, you can make really interesting kind of quick sequences that would be kind of weird to punch in. You can have them repeating on weird kind of steps. So that would be, we can have it repeating like 11, and then have this one going like that. And we'll have hold on a few of them. So check this out. Right, so that's kind of like not musical at all, but you get the idea. Right, so I can probably go like 8. You can do weird stuff and with the filter. Right, and that would be the sequence mode. Of course, you have regular up-down, traditional arpeggiator modes, and as played would be, say, if you press 1 note and then you press them, it plays them in order. So you just have to kind of experiment in that way. It's just classic modes, and that would be the arpeggiator. You have 2 arpeggiators, 1 per layer. So you can get really interesting kind of sounds that way. So yeah, useful for kind of trancey sounds, useful for techno sounds as well. You can get really interesting ones, especially because you can alter the steps, which I don't see in a lot of modern synthesizers. You can have all these steps, and you can have them like against the time signature, which I want to get across here. Right, and you can do cool stuff, especially with a sequencer. That is the Arpeggiator and sequencer for Synthmaster. Hope you learned stuff, and take care. Hey, what's up, guys? In this video, we're going to be going over distortion and lo-fi, and we've been getting into like the technical aspects of Synthmaster, but let's get into the fun stuff. So we will reset the preset here. We have a basic saw. Let me turn that up a tiny bit. Alright, so we have a basic saw, and I want to kind of shape it with a filter here. So you notice that we're getting rid of the harshness and shaving off some of the harmonics. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn on distortion. We turn it on right here. It's after the filter, so it's post-filter distortion. Think of it that way. And here it is. So let's have a mix at 100%. You have mix at 0 and mix at 100. Right in the middle is 50, naturally. So that would be kind of, you have the original signal coming through, but you're still getting that kind of drive depending on what you're into after. So we will have 100%. And the drive is the amount that you're driving into the amplifier circuit, quote unquote. Then we'll add some bias to add a bit more harmonics, and then we're just going to drive it a bit more. There we go. Then we'll bring it down an octave. Cool. So there's a few ways you can adjust the character. You can adjust the character with the distortion curve. We can add some harmonics. Maybe that's a little bit too intense. We will move that back up. Let me turn that up just a tiny bit. Alright, so we have a whole lot of harmonics there. Very nice. And there's ways we can drive it even further. We can drive it with a simple kind of EQ shelf. So it's a pre and post EQ. So what we can do is drive just the low end into it. We get a really interesting kind of timbre that way. Or a high shelf, we could just drag that. Kind of the same thing. Right? We can go post. So if we want to like kind of clean it up, we can have a post distortion EQ. Kind of accentuating those sinusoidals. Right? Kind of analog and fun. We're going to do a bit of both of that. A bit of both to that. We can also accentuate the harmonics that way. Right, so we have, oops, we have like, the bat signal here, or whatever. Very interesting shape, very interesting timbre, and that's just with distortion. So there's another way to add harmonics, and I'll show you. We'll freeze that. So now, what we can do is we can go to lo-fi. So lo-fi is a sample rate reduction. We have to go to our layer and turn it on. We can also turn it on up here. And it's a bit in sample rate reduction. So what that means is the number of bits is like the number of the resolution of amplitude, and sample rate is the resolution of like the amount of information you can store in an amount of time. So time by amplitude. So as we decrease the amplitude, right, we get bits, right? There's like a stair step, and that happens when you have a low bit rate. Right, and this in turn adds harmonics, which are really cool. A lot of older gear did this, you know, so you can have like insane high quality anti-alias, oversampled, da-da-da-da, but then we add sample rate and bit reduction to things, which is kind of funny. Right? So there's that. And that is over time. Right? And you get some really intense, kind of square wave-ish. So you go from this nice distorted, kind of clean, you know, some sinusoidal and like kind of rich harmonics to even like devastated, decimated, fun square waves of doom here. Always fun to do. Alright, so there's that. And then there's sample rate reduction. Right, so that's a sample rate reduction over time. Right, so it's a different kind of stair step. It's just stair step over time, not in amplitude. See, the other one was in amplitude. I'll show you. Right? This is over time, and this is in amplitude, right? So this is different resolutions. And used together, you can create some really kind of interesting things. Right? Another thing we can do, is have a mixture of both. So, you know, we work at like 16-bit. This is allegedly 24 bits, which is good. I think it's 24 bits. Pretty sure it's 24 bits anyway. We can reduce that, if you see up here. We can reduce that to like a classic 12 bits. Or 8-bit, which is like cassette, maybe. Right, so that, but once you get down to 4 bits, you get pretty crazy. And it's a mixture of both of these, so this would be negative. No, you would want. So right now we're working 44, so like 16K would be an MPC, if I remember correctly, and all that. So once you're at that point, say you want that much, what those old school kind of machines did, old school synths, the digital ones, they would kind of have a roll off, right? They wouldn't translate the higher harmonic or the higher frequencies. And you can have like another filter here for the lo-fi. You can add, right, some really cool stuff, and it's all about shaping, and you want to shape the sound. We got that out of just a simple sawtooth. A filter, distortion, a bit of shaping, and yeah, and then from there we can do the EQ and stuff like that. But we're going to get into that later. So yeah, that is distortion and lo-fi in Synthmaster. Hope you learned stuff, and we will be back. Hey, what's up guys? In this video we're going to be going over the ensemble and phaser insert effects. Each layer has its own ensemble and phaser right at the end here, and they're great ways to add movement to your sound. So much like a unison, free-running unison, and we'll just stereoize that one. Great way to make like a simple saw into something sounding bigger just by boosting the voices. There's another way to do it with our ensemble here, and that modulates. So we'll just turn that on, and we'll go to our ensemble effects here. It's an effects too. It's on. It's just a way to have modulated delay. So what it does is it does somewhat of the same thing, and it modulates it with 2 LFOs, the delay and the space. You can have different pans, and the width is what you want to look at. So you can have up to 8 voices of this. Right, nice and big and wide. You can have varying degrees. You can have extreme. Probably might not want to have that. You want it slow. It sounds like unison, but it takes not as much DSP. Right? So we can have, say, unison of 4, and that we can have like a very like a big sound. So 8 times 8 is 64. We can have 64 voices at the same time. Big sounds, and that's really awesome. We can vary the delay and space to get like more space. Just a varying degree of delay, modulation, and it has its own EQ, right? And you can kind of shave things off, because sometimes unison does some weird things in the low end you might not care for. And yeah, that is Ensemble, very useful. What do we have here? We have our phaser. So this is our phaser. So what a phaser does is it stacks up multiple copies of itself and then modulates the delay between them with a modulation thing here. And there's different speeds as well, and the speeds are here, and they're syncable, which is good. So what that sounds like, right? That's what classic phasing is basically doubling up that, so we can have multiple stages, as you go up in stages, you get more of an intense effect. And usually you want the mix to be, you know, around 50%. You can have it extreme. Typically I have it around here, and it's a great way to add movement. You can have a very slow, and the feedback is the amount of phasing, like the feedback. Right? See these little peaks there? Always good and fun. So with that, and our ensemble effect here, we'll have 2. And then we'll have, say, 8 voices. Right? Big sounds, big loud sounds. And yeah, that would be our 2 inserts. And yeah, I hope you learned stuff, and we'll be back with some more fun things. Alright, take care. Hey, what's up guys? In this video we're going to be going over the EQ insert. It's the last insert of our layer here. It's a great way to add low end, some high end, and some other fun stuff. So we have, we'll just go reset here, and we will have a square and a saw. We'll sync them. I got big fingers. So now what we can do is we'll set it to mono, 4 voices. And what we can do is turn on the EQ, and it's in effects 3, and we can add a low shelf. And what I like to do is I like to cut around here. Just a cue there. Smooth out that. And we can boost the highs. Right? So that is a way to kind of EQ things. That's how I would do it. We have a high pass of variable curves, 12, 24, 36, 48. A low pass, 12, 24, 36, 48. And kind of low cutoff, a low shelf, a high shelf, and 2 surgically cutting things that we can move around anywhere with variable gain plus our negative, and it is 24 dB per octave, and with an adjustable Q, so we can really get in there. Right, so that'd be a little bit too intense. Right, so that sounds kind of boring. Right, so this is kind of the power of the EQ. It can really add in some interesting things. I'll show you. Right, adds sinusoidal, and yeah, that's pretty much it for the EQ. Yeah, let's make another sound. Show you what it can do for, say, something in the high end. Oh, I want to select that. We're running stereo. Right, so sometimes unison in the low end doesn't really work that well, and it kind of like muddies up the mix. That's just unison in general. So we can kind of high pass that with a kind of a shelf or a low shelf, I mean. And we'll do that. Move this guy here. I'll do that, and then we can boost the highs to taste. As an example. Right? So imagine what that sounds like with all of our other effects. We can think of it as just another filter. It's great and it works well, and I hope you learned stuff, and we'll be back. Hey, what's up guys? In this video we're going to be going over the effects page here. So there's two buses, and they're mixable between layer 1 and layer 2. So you can have layer 1 have it going into bus 1 and layer 2 going into bus 2, or you can have a mixture of both. So you can have them going in parallel. Then you can have up to 10 effects running at once, and that's pretty cool. So, and also your layer effects routing, right? What you were doing before is here, and you can adjust the routing if you would wish, and that's really useful. So it's all on one page, and it's all ready. I have a sound here, a pluck, so sounds a bit more interesting. This came bundled with it. It's preset clean saws AZ. All right, so we have our effects section here, and the first one we're going to go over is echo. So we're going to turn that on. We can also change any of these by right-clicking. Thought I should mention that. So you have an echo here, and we have mix and width. Right. So one of my favorites is ping pong. So ping pong will you'll have an effect that goes da 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 da, but if you have ping pong, it'll go left and right, left and right, left and right. So my favorite way of having a delay time is 16ths and 8ths. Right, sounds kind of pretty. So we have width, which would be stereo, so we can have this mono, which kind of goes against the effect of a ping pong delay. So we'll do that. Pan. It tells you where the reverb kind of sits in the stereo field. And feedback. Feedback is really useful. It kind of makes the delay line longer, or the echo line longer. Right? And there's that. Drive is kind of, it distorts the distortion. I mean, it distorts the distortion. It distorts the actual wet delay. So I'll give you a listen to that. Right, so that kind of emulates like the older kind of machines. They didn't have the resolution of the delay, and sometimes the tape would be dirty of those delay lines and stuff like that. Very Pink Floydish, very useful, and that's all well and good. So the EQ would be, the EQ of what the actual wet delay would be. Right, so we can make it all kind of non-existent, or have that, or we can shave off the high end here. Right, so you want to have the mix in there. So typically you want the mix to be around 50 or a little bit less than that. Right, very pretty, and that is the echo. Let me get my notes open again. Reverb. So reverb and echo. Reverb is here, so we'll just turn reverb on. Reverb kind of the same way, but we have, it's just a smearing of it. I'll boost this. Right, puts it in a room basically. We have distance, which would be the mic distance, or the distance you are away from the sound. So I guess the mic distance. Time, which would be the reverb time. Right, so now we're in a bathroom, and then now we were in a cathedral. So if you want, the time it takes for the sound to bounce off the wall and then back at you. Size would be room size. Would be reflection. Oh, room size is the reflection. Time is the time it takes for the reverb to kind of die down. So if you have like a cathedral made out of like wood, then the time would be shorter because it would be absorbed. But but if you had a cathedral made out of very reflective steel, the walls were all steel, of course it would take a long time for that to kind of dissipate. And another great way to do things is to have echo into the reverb. Right? So a very, very big sound can be possible there. You can modulate the reflection speed to give it a bit more randomness. So you kind of emulate things bouncing around the hall or room that you have. Damping is kind of like how many absorbent surfaces do you have? So very low damping. Absorbs the high frequencies, because high frequencies are absorbed easier than low frequencies. And you can kind of have an EQ of the early, so you can have the EQ of what you want being fed into the reverb unit. I'll turn that off. Right, you can have a post EQ or a late reflection EQ. Right, so you can really shape your sound and your room with this reverb. It's very useful, and it's all well and fun. So, compressor. So we have two compressors. We can have a sidechain input, which I might do in a later video. You can basically have the input of your layer dry affecting the layer wet, so you can get like kind of a snappy transient of like your sound, and then the reverb kind of flies right back at you with the sidechain. But basically this is the compressor. We have a gain knob here. Right, so you have a ratio. High ratio means more compression, basically. High knee means more compression, basically. And the threshold is what you want to like attenuate. You can really hear it with the attack. So let's go. Let's go reverb here, and then we can go compressor here. Right, so we have a very big sound here, and we want to kind of attenuate it, so a very slow release here. Right, so what that's doing is, I have a whole series on compression, but what it's doing is it's taking the signal in and it's saying, okay, this is going way over the threshold, so we're going to lower the volume. And how fast we lower the volume is with the attack here. And then how slow the volume goes back to normal is with the release. So we're using kind of the sidechain as like an envelope, which we're going to get an envelope soon. Right? So you can see if we have a very fast attack, it eats up everything. But if we have a slow one, it makes it all nice and pretty. So I'll turn the comp on and off. Right, that's because the release is taking a bit, but gives it a whole new feel, kind of makes the room bigger with the reverb. So using effects in combination takes quite a bit of experience and all that fun stuff. All right, so what do we have next? Let me look at my notes. Tremolo. So tremolo is basically a guitar unit effect. It's just modulating the amplitude. So I'll turn on tremolo, and I will go. Actually, let's reset that preset. That rhymes, and we'll go tremolo. We'll turn tremolo on. So it's kind of like amplitude modulation. That's because it is amplitude modulation. It's a way to kind of make that guitar sound. I'm sure someone could think of an example of that guitar sound, but it's used a lot. So you have the modulation rate, and this is the speed of it. Right, and this will modulate the left and right ratio, so the left and the right gets modulated at different speeds. And the phase adjusts the starting phase of the left and the right. So with like an echo, that's a weird example, but you get the idea. It's a famous guitar effect, and it has some use. Right? Basically amplitude modulation. You can do that with your modulation matrix, which we'll get into. But yeah, let's one more. We have chorus. So chorus basically stacks up the left and the it separates the left and the right, and it delays either the left or the right. It delays them both. So we'll turn it on chorus. Right? So it's somewhat like a phaser, but it's different. We have a width knob, so we can have it kind of mono or fully, width. We have a ratio just like our tremolo, and that adjusts the ratio of the delay of the left and the right, and the starting phase of the left and the right. Right, so you have something that's very old school. These are basically kind of retro guitar effects, and you can have them all on to have a neat kind of effect. And that is basically the effects page. So say if you have 2 layers, because you can have 2 layers, think of them as 2 Synthmasters all put together, and you have a nice bit of layery goodness that you have there. So you have 1 layer here and then 1 layer here. You can essentially send them to individual effects routing, right? So you can have them both sent to like whatever you want, basically. You can have so we'll have layer 1 sent to bus 1, and then layer 2 sent to bus 2. In that way, they're not kind of running into the same effects. We can have separate compressors and such. And we can have them sidechained into each other with this input here, which I probably might do for another video. And of course, you can have control over what you have on or off, much like you did in layer 1 here. So it's all relative, and hope you learned stuff, and take care. Hey, what's up guys? In this video we're going to be talking about envelopes. So envelopes are a way to add changes over time to basically any parameter in Synthmaster. By default, the volume is mapped to envelope 1. So without that, we just have basically forever. We'd have that forever because nothing's controlling it to like go down. So this is what an envelope looks like. It's an ADSR and envelope 1, envelope 1. This is how you map things. We'll get into that later. But so basically you have your attack, and you can see that down here. I'll just boost this. Right. So we have basically when you press a key, sound comes on. When you release a key, sound goes off. All right, pretty simple. But what if we want to change that? So we will adjust the attack, and this will kind of give it a kind of a delay and a sweep up. And with this, we can adjust the curve. Right, we can adjust it even more. Right, so now we have like a kind of a fade up, which is really cool. That is basically how you make pads and such. Right, so there's attack and a decay. So decay is the amount. Decay and sustain are relative. So I'll show you what that does. Right, so we have a bit of a transient there. And how you adjust that is by moving this over. So this ADSR is a little bit quirky, but it's actually way more intuitive than I kind of discovered it was. Right, so you can adjust it, and you get even more of a curve here. So this would be good for like plucks and all that fun stuff. Right, so you're giving kind of like life to the sound. You can, of course, adjust the curve here. So squares are at points, and you notice that it changes down here. Really cool. Release is when you release the key, it will continue to play. Right? We have a bit of a tail there now. So all of these together will shape your sound. Right? We can drag that over, increase the release, or increase that here. a very long release. Really long. We can adjust it with that. So that's pretty cool. We can do other fun stuff with this kind of system. So we're going to go to envelope 2, and I want to map the filter opening and closing. So right, I wanted to do that more or less. So I'm just going to boost the gain here. Right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click. I'm going to add a modulation source. I'm going to go to voice. I'm going to go to ADSR envelope 2. Bam. Right? And I'm going to go over here. This is our modulation matrix. This is the amount. So we want it to obviously be modulated, so we'll go all the way to the right. So now it's open. So, okay, what's happening now? Well, we have to change that around. And we can adjust an attack. Right. We have to move this over. We could do that, but I want to pluck. The pluck would be fun, so I'm going to, oops, move that over, and then increase the sustain a bit, and then bring that down. Right, so I'm just pulling it over. You can also sync it, and you can see, oh, okay, here we go. We can adjust the amount, the curve of this to an extreme curve. So you can see what it's doing now. Can I adjust an attack? Right. And if we move this all the way to the left, it does the opposite. So it's kind of like a plus or minus voltage control. Another thing I should mention is the bit depth. So this will be, right now it's really smooth and fluid. Oh, I want to do that. It's a very smooth step. It's not, well, it's not stepping at all, but as we decrease the bit depth of it, it steps down. So this is kind of like a controllable sample and hold. All right, cool. So let's, we'll start a new, we'll do the same thing kind of. We're going to use a multi-stage envelope, right? We're going to map this to modulation source, synth, multi-stage envelope 1. Right, so we have that. Alright, so this can be repeated, but we're not going to repeat it for now. I want this to start at 1, and I want this to end at 3. Alright, so we have 3 steps here. Alright, so we have 3 stages, so we can add more stages. Right, we can add as many steps as we want. This black part is the steps, so we want it to match the amount of steps that we have. And we can move this around and do all sorts of fun stuff. Right, different curves. Right, multi-stage LFO. You can also have it looping infinitely. Right. Right, you can do all sorts of fun stuff that way before I irritate you. So that would be the multi-stage LFO, the envelope, ADSR envelope, and multi-stage envelope. They're different kinds. So this is more traditional, an ADSR, attack, decay, sustain, release, and the amplifier amount, so however much you're sending to it. And we have our multi-stage here, which is loopable or not so much loopable. Drift is kind of like changes, kind of like an like the pitch tracking or the envelope tracking has gone out, and it emulates analog. So it'll change, it'll vary these by degrees every time you press the different key, and it adds to the effect. And yeah, all right, so that would be that, and we'll be back. Hey, what's up guys? In this video we're going to be going over LFOs. Each layer has 2 LFOs. right? And the synth globally has 4 LFOs. So that's 8 LFOs, and that's a lot of modulation. So what modulation is, it changes over time. So much like opening and closing a filter like this, that's exactly what the LFO is doing. So we're going to use the global LFO. We're going to use the global LFO. So I'm going to do that, so we can hear and see. All right, so I'm going to map that. Right click. The source will be the synth LFO1. So this is the global LFO. I'll turn that up. I'll bring this guy down. Alright, cool. Alright, so we have a few wave options. Triangle, sine, triangle, square. Right, so basically opening and closing, saw. You can re-trigger it. And now we have step. I'm going to get to step in a second. So we have a sync. So we can sync that and have like a saw that way. Right, pretty cool. And yeah, it's just basically an LFO. So you can have like that map to a pitch, get a nice vibrato. All right, so we're gonna turn off sync. We're gonna go step. Now step is kind of like, well, it's basically stepped. Let's go, so it's going up and down. Right, pretty cool. We can adjust that by clicking and moving these gentlemen around. We can adjust the curve by clicking on these little spherical circle things. We can increase the amount of steps. We can have a lot of steps. Alright, we'll just have, we can have 2, we can have 8, or 32. You can do all sorts of fun stuff. Glide, it means that you don't actually snap from one end to the other. It just kind of glides back up. And noises, it adds an analog kind of randomness, or jitter, as they would say, to it. And randomizes these values. So if you have like a lot of random going on, this turns into basically a sample and hold because these don't matter anymore. Just the envelope does. Right, and you have 4 of these and they're global. You have the same thing basically for each layer. So you have a lot of LFOs useful to you, and you can right click and modulate anything in our modulation matrix here. Just make sure it's all selected and moved all the way to the right or the left, depending on what you're doing. So yeah, hope you enjoyed, hope you learned stuff, and take care.